Good morning, John Wirtz here. We're with Senator Don Huffines. He's running for governor of Texas. It's December 21st. With me is Bob Bagley, Dale Fessenden, DJ Fike, Pat, and Dennis Tibbs. Welcome, sir, and appreciate you coming in, filling out our questionnaire.
Sure.
And coming down this morning to visit with us. And as we discussed, feel free to take up to 5 minutes in your opening. Tell us a little bit about why you're running for this race, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and hello, Montgomery County. Well, I'm Don Huffines, and I will be the next governor of Texas. I'm a fifth-generation Texan. I was born in Dallas, grew up in the Metroplex, and I've been a lifelong conservative activist all my life. I went to the University of Texas. I graduated there in 1981 with a finance degree, and the best thing that ever happened to me was my beautiful, perfect wife, Mary Catherine, which a lot of folks know. We've been married 34 years. We have 5 children, 4 boys and a girl, and we homeschooled them throughout their schooling career to make sure they could grow up in a good conservative Christian environment, and they did. I like to brag on my boys. All 4 boys were Eagle Scouts, and that was a good time of our life. I was Scoutmaster, and 4 Longhorns and one Horned Frog in that bunch. And I'm a new grandfather, 4 times over in the last 19 months. So it's a new chapter in our life. It's very exciting, and I'm a businessman. I started my company in 1985. I'm in commercial real estate. I build new apartments, and we do land development, and it's been very good to me and been very successful. On my interest in liberty and freedom really started when I was a teenager. My parents were not political. They were typical Texas Democrats. But anyway, I worked a lot of campaigns. When I was 17, I actually volunteered for Reagan's campaign. I went to my first Republican county convention when I was 18, about 2 weeks. I've supported a lot of candidates over the years. And in 13, I decided I was tired of yelling at that TV, and I needed to get a rhino on the wall, and I took out the most liberal, really the most liberal legislator in Austin. And so I was in this Texas Senate from 14 to 18. I was always ranked one of the most conservative, top 3 most conservative state senators when I was there. I was the only elected office holder, according to the Secretary of the Senate, that's been in Austin that never took a penny from the state of Texas. No pay, no health care, no per diem, no pension, no travel vouchers, no reimbursements, no nothing. And I made a big effort to do that because I will never work for the government. I only work for the people that hired me, and I'm going to do the same thing as governor. I'm running because simply I feel just like most Republican primary voters, we're all tired of the lies, we're tired of the broken, empty promises. I mean, I've supported our party platform for 30 years, and that was one reason I ran for the Texas Senate, to try to get that into law. And the people in Austin don't like it. They make fun of it, they belittle it, they fought so hard. I'm the first senator that filed constitutional carry. I'm the first senator that tried to phase out the franchise tax, for instance. And you just can't imagine how hard they worked to make sure they wouldn't have to vote on those issues. Well, I think we're just all tired of the lies and broken and empty promises. Is the border secure? Are your property taxes going away or going down? Do you have confidence your votes aren't being stolen? Of course, the answer is no, no, and no. I've got a comprehensive plan to secure that border. And I'm sure you guys are going to ask me a question about that. I hope you're going to ask me about that. Something I worked on a long time, and I explained it out on Tucker when I was on Tucker, explaining my border plan. And the most significant thing about it is I'm never asking permission from the federal government to secure the Texas border. It's not necessary. We've already got the legal authority we need from the U.S. Constitution to do whatever we need to do to stop this invasion. This is a premeditated attack on Texas. I was on the committee in Austin. I understand it very well, the border situation. Anyway, we're going to get her done, and I'll go over that in a minute. I've got a great plan to phase out property taxes entirely. It's a plank of the Republican Party platform. It'll take about 8 to 10 years to get done. We're going to keep local governments fully funded. We're going to make sure everybody gets to vote on it. And we're never going to have an income tax. I've got a great plan to give you confidence in your election, and it's all about enforcing the law. I'm going to prove not just to the country what it means for Texas to be sovereign. I'm going to prove it to the world what it means for Texas to be sovereign. I'll never ask permission from the federal government to do anything. I'm not particularly concerned about the lawsuits that we might lose for people interpreting the law. Remember, judges don't enforce the law. They just interpret the law. I'm going to get our culture back in this state. And it starts with the governor's office. Almost everything is downstream of the governor's office, our virtue and everything else. I'm going to put prayer in the schools. I'm going to make sure we have Bible study back in our middle schools. And we're going to get our virtue back. And we're going to get our liberty back. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it. You had mentioned that you hadn't taken any compensation from the state of Texas. That's great. Are you going to take a salary when you become governor?
I will not take a salary, reimbursements, pension, health care, anything. I won't fill out a travel voucher. I won't get, for any reason. The same as I did in the Texas Senate. And then, like I said, I was the only one in the history of the state of Texas that's ever done it that way. And there's a lot more people down there, a lot richer than I am, let me tell you, man. It wasn't about that. If I had to live in a trailer out there in the yard, I'd do it. Because I work for the people.
Okay.
And I will not take any money from the state as governor. I think right now we think that I do have to live in the governor's mansion. So
during your time in office, you indicated you authored legislation supporting term limits, pro-life measures, constitutional carry, as you mentioned earlier, and school choice. Many school choice programs, like some charter schools, have federal strings attached. How was that different, if at all, on school choice? Did you have limitations on school choice towards charter schools, not accepting federal money? Because some do, and some don't.
Well, I'm the one that helped author. My bill was the first bill filed for education savings accounts. And we're going to start calling it now, not school choice. I'd like everybody to start calling it like education freedom. And so we can use the same tactics that the left uses. Like I never call a leftist a progressive. I call them leftists. I don't call Democrats, but I call them leftists. The same with the illegals. I don't call them migrants. I call them illegals. We need to change that narrative with school. I'm a champion of school choice. Look, I'm a business guy. And it puts me at a distinct advantage over any of my competition, particularly Abbott, because Abbott's a 30-year career politician. He's never signed a paycheck in his life, for instance. He's a political windsock. He just blows in the wind. This is the first time Greg Abbott's ever had a primary challenge. I'm in this to win. But the most significant thing is I'm here to solve the problems of Texas. I'm not interested in the political ramifications of the decisions I make, really, because I'm not looking for a new career. I'm not looking for a new job. I've already got all that. I'm looking to save Texas, and we have a chance to save the country. And one of the most important things is our education system. Competition always lowers the price and increases the quality of everything it touches. And of course it's going to do that with our government school system. If any place we need it is in a government monopoly. I'll do everything I can to support education freedom.
All right, thank you. Bob?
It's been a few years, but we had a pretty good state convention up in Dallas-Fort Worth area. I can't remember where it was, but as I recalled, you were working on the platform and supporting the platform. Seems we have a number of people that are running for office right now, to include another one that's running for governor, that don't believe in our platform. What's your fulfilling? Do you believe in the entire platform, in the process of the platform? And does it mean anything to being a Republican?
I love the party platform. It's one of the, let me just go back and say, it's one of the main reasons I decided to run for the Texas Senate, is because I was tired of the lies. I was tired of supporting Republicans that say they're conservative. And we all know that every Republican says they're conservative, and 90% of them are liars. I've seen it firsthand. I got a PhD in the swamp in Austin. You can't believe how much I was cussed at and screamed at on the Texas Senate, floor of the Texas Senate, trying to get them to support a document that clearly defines who we are as Texas Republicans. It clearly defines our legislative priorities. They make fun of that behind closed doors. as you probably know. And it starts with leadership at the governor's office. I'm the one in '08 when I was a delegate to the National Convention in Cleveland that shipped 2,400 copies and had them printed to the convention, the national convention in Cleveland, and I put those on every single chair for every national delegate in the nation, so they too could see what it meant to be a Texas Republican, because our platform is the best in the nation. And I got those comments back from all the national delegates. They loved it. I love our party platform. I believe in it. It's put together by tens of thousands of Texas Republicans across the state. It's the main thing we do. My legislative agenda is your legislative agenda. I will fulfill my campaign promises, which are all on the platform anyway. The first 100 days of my administration, the only thing they can work on is the governor tells them that is what they're going to work on. I know the club, and I know what those yahoos want down there. And they want to get a bill done more than anything. Well, guess who gets last call on every bill? The governor. They're going to get my stuff done, or they're not going to get one thing else done. And I'm not just saying that as an idle threat. It's a new day under a Huffines administration. I'm going to run the governor's office like you've never seen it. Because we control everything in Austin for 20 years. And we're running out of time.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, one of the obvious questions is, you have a very credible position on not receiving a salary or any of the other accoutrements from the Texas state government. But what happens to your businesses during your administration? Because there could be perceived conflicts of interest, et cetera, perceived favoritism and all this. What is your plan for avoiding that?
Well, the state constitution actually doesn't allow the governor to conduct business other than the state's business, basically, while they're in office. So I, like most other governors ahead of me, will be putting everything in a blind trust, and you set up a blind trust for that effect. The Constitution was clear. They didn't want governors being involved logically with other businesses or any other occupation while they're running the state of Texas. And I will, of course, do that and follow those same rules and regulations.
Okay. Another possibly quick question. You have been very clear on your position on property taxes, and but you said you will cap spending increases to 2% biennium. I'm trying to understand why you came up with that hard and fast figure. Most people usually use inflation plus cost of living, kind of things.
Yes, sir.
What if inflation, as its current rate, is 6.8% or whatever? Will you still cap spending at 2%?
That number, I worked with my team on that, and we felt like that was a reasonable number because that's what ISDs are now capped at, and their growth. And so we took, I was thinking that was a good number. Here's a lot of paths to get there to get rid of property taxes. It's a plank in our party platform, and it has been. It's a terrible way to fund government. In the state of Texas, I like to point out, actually in the nation, you never own any real estate. You don't own your own home. You never will. You don't own this building. And you just don't own anything. All you do is just rent it from the government. You have no control over that. You don't even have a lease. It just goes up and up every year, particularly in a high inflationary environment. 50% of it's paid approximately by businesses. This is a bad way to fund government. I've worked with TPPF, Texas Public Policy Foundation, and others. I've got lots of data and spreadsheets. We'll get this done. It's one of my number one, if not number one, legislative priorities is to phase it out. It'll take 8 to 10 years to get that done. We're never going to have an income tax. Everybody's going to get to vote on it. I want it to be a constitutional amendment, so when I cut the head off the snake, it'll stay dead. No one knows what your property is going to be worth, and you're going to actually own your own home in a Huffines administration. I'll point real quick. There's one thing you have to make this happen. In all of this, in securing our border and stopping all these issues and getting these issues done, we want to get them. You have to have a governor that champions it. We're not going to get to the 1-inch line if we don't have a governor that wants it done. And it's about leadership, no excuses. And that's unfortunately what we don't have in Austin right now is leadership.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Jay?
Our present governor has had several special sessions this year. The first one, I believe it was shut down by a group of Democrats that ran away. How would your administration handle that situation? And including the appointment of Democrats to committee chairmanships?
Thank you very much for that question. And I would say I would never be such a weak leader as our current governor is to ever get in that position, first of all. That was a huge mistake on his part. They did that, to refresh you, they did that in regular session, right there at the end. Everybody knew they were going to do that again. They already broadcast that out. And what did he do after that? He signed 372 Democrat bills into law. He signed the budget they all voted into law. He gave away all of his leverage to keep them in Austin and make them work. The state constitution clearly gives the House the ability to do anything it wants to punish people that break quorum. They could throw their office furniture in the yard. They can pound their vehicle. They can dock their pension. Believe me, they love that pension down there. They can dock their pay. The governor could even call a special election to get to say they're derelict of duty. He didn't do any of that. What he did is come out with his campaign manager, Dave Carney, and said, we're going to put them all in jail. Of course, he had no intention of doing that. It's not what it seems in Austin. A lot of it is a charade. It's a big hustle. And we're all being played by this hustle. The governor thinks he's going to go, gets everybody to say he didn't no intention. He'd already made that deal with the Democrats, in my opinion, before all of this took place. And so, of course, I would make sure they would never do it. They wouldn't even, I dare them to even threaten to do it in Huffines administration. I don't think they'd be that stupid. I really don't.
So you're also going to turn down your state-provided gravesite?
My state provided one.
Gravesite?
Oh, yeah, we get to get buried. I already got that privilege. My wife doesn't want me to be buried down there. So I'm not sure I'll get buried down there.
You know, taxpayer-funded lobbying has been a priority and an issue for a long time. We've got things like Texas Association of Counties, and what I've learned is we got Texas Association of Accountants, the Texas Association of Tax Collectors, appraisers, garbage men. Everything's got a lobbying group for it. And some people say let the local people handle that, but what I found out is the legislature has already hamstrung the local people. The legislature requires that local government be a member of those things so that they can take continuing credit. So do we need a commission to find alternatives, or how are we going to stop the legislature from forcing taxpayer-funded lobbying?
Well, this is, of course, a priority of the party for a long time. And this could have been done like every bill. I do want to point out that the governor of Texas can get almost any bill done anytime he wants. I've seen it. I've been in the swamp. I've had a PhD in it. And anyone tells you otherwise, they are lying. He could get taxpayer-funded lobbying done in about 48 hours. He's a leader, and he wanted it done. When I closed down that government agency in Dallas, it was stealing tens of millions of dollars and got those people all put in jail, and 3,000 employees. They spent $1.3 million of stolen taxpayer money to defeat my legislation to close them down. I've been on the receiving end of this a lot. Same when I wanted to audit the tollway authorities. They spent thousands of dollars on lobbyists to keep me from getting my bill done, to have a forensic audit with the tollway authorities. There's a lot of government corruption out there, a tremendous amount. This will be one of my priorities to make sure we stop taxpayer-funded lobbyists.
Okay, one other thing here. You mentioned that you do oppose Common Core and CRT and things like that, but not necessarily so outspoken against IB. And IB is the United Nations.
Yes.
Right? So,
yes.
How would you keep, or why would you keep funding the United Nations?
Well, we wouldn't. The power of the governor is not only legislatively, because they'll get last call, like I said, on all the bills, and the budget. We get to work on the budget. The governor does before session starts, and of course I get last call line item on the budget when the legislature finishes with it. We can stop the funding of these school districts and a lot of this, and that's the power of the purse, and it's very powerful. Have you ever met a school district that had too much money? They always want more money.
Yeah.
You know, but I also want to point out culture. Our culture is so important to get back. Restoring our virtues in this state is the foundation of who we are as Americans and as Texans. And the best way to do it is with the governor's office. I'm, for instance, going to get prayer back in the schools. Like I said, I'm going to make sure we get biblical studies back in our system. We've got to get our virtue back in this state. And of course, I'll stop CRT. I'm the one that's uncovered it even during the campaign in our state agencies and Family and Protective Services, Department of Family and Protective Services, and that onboarding document. We got them to stop that. We got them to take down the transgender brainwashing of our foster care kids on their website. I got that done this year. Abbott's really responding to my campaign in every way he needs to. Of course, I will stop anything related to the UN and brainwashing our kids any more than ever.
And that includes IV, right?
Yes, sir.
All right.
On that issue on the Dallas County school
Yes, sir.
that you referred to that stole tens of millions of dollars, how long ago was that?
That was well, I started working on it in 15, in the 84th and the 85th session. I spent about 3 years having hearings down in Austin on them because they can never answer any financial questions. And I got it done at the very last few days of the session in the 86th session. So it'd be 17.
Okay.
And then I got the Texas Rangers involved before that. And then we got, the files went to the Dallas District Attorney. The FBI took the files and the DA for various reasons. And so then we got law enforcement involved. And then I got I got the bill done in 17 to close them down.
Okay. You're in real estate, large real estate development company, residential or commercial or both?
We do land development and build apartments. And I've built other buildings, office buildings and some retail, but primarily it's all commercial real estate. I had a home building company in the past. I've been involved in a lot of businesses, but that's my primary business.
Okay. I'll save that question for next go round, Bob.
Yeah.
There's nothing more important than life, and we're guaranteed life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness or property. What's your feelings on the pro-life stand? When does life begin? When does life end? And do you have exceptions for abortion?
I like to think I'm the most pro-life candidate to ever run for governor. I'm pro-life from conception to natural death, no exceptions. I won't rest till we abolish abortion in the state of Texas. The heartbeat bill is good, but look, all Republicans now are generally going to say they're pro-life. Do they really mean it? Are they going to fight for it? It's the same with a lot of these issues. I'm for that, I'm for this, I'm conservative. But are they champions for it? Are they really going to fight? And, so I like to think that right now, after the heartbeat bill, we're still, the last data I saw, we're still going to kill 25,000 Texans a year. It's half what it was. It's still 25,000. And so we need to stop all of it.
Okay. I'm having a
Excuse me,
difficult time.
no exceptions. Did I say
You
that?
said- you did.
Okay, I forgot.
Yes, sir, you did.
Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Okay. We don't have a choice in having payroll taxes withheld from our paychecks and sent to DC. So the money's flowing that way. And with some of your positions and 10th Amendment stands, which I'm in agreement with, I can very easily see the federal government saying, we ain't sending any money back to Texas. How do you deal with that? We're sending all that money up there and getting what, zero in return, worst case?
I've already looked at that quite a bit, and where we could intercept the money prior to getting to the federal treasury. There's not a lot, because most of it's income tax that we send up there. The gasoline tax was the one I was particularly interested in because we've been a donor state on that forever. And so I want to get our money back on that. Look, the federal government obviously puts their claws in us with the money. So the first thing I'll be looking at is where we can fight back on that and we can be self-sufficient. Education is one. Most Texans don't really realize how much we spend for illegal immigration and are educating these kids that aren't supposed to be here in our state. And it's all because of this Pilar case. It was a Texas Supreme Court case in 1981. It was really the catalyst that started illegal immigrants staying in the state of Texas and the United States. I grew up here in Texas and I understand the situation. I'll be challenging that every way I can. And the liberals are going to the leftists are just going to freak out. But we've got to know, right now Texans are spending about $6 billion a year, every year, in our education system, educating kids that aren't supposed to be here. So that's just another example where we're going to push back against the federal government, and any way I can, and particularly with the money.
Okay. Time's up, DJ.
All the past, almost 2 years now, we've been dealing with this COVID stuff. And more we hear about mandates and possible mandates and with our National Guard and this, that, and the other. And I don't see any end to it. So how are you going to deal with the federal mandate threats, the National Guard?
Yes. Well, this is really one of the catalysts that when I decided to run for governor, when the governor shut the state down, Abbott did, in March of 20. We all remember that happening. He put 3 million Texans out of work in one day, all depended on the government. He destroyed tens of thousands of businesses unilaterally. He closed our churches over the holiest season of the year, Easter. I put an op-ed in most of the major newspapers in the state of Texas, and it was about the 3rd week of April, begging him to open up the state of Texas. I led the rallies around the state, opening Texas rallies up. I've never taken the vaccine, and I never will. But if somebody else wants to take it, that's fine. If they want to wear a mask, fine. I don't care if they walk, what they do. I'm here for their medical liberty. I'm here to protect Texans. And this is not a complicated situation. I called for the 3rd special session. And the 4th special session, he could easily pass a bill to get this done and make it a criminal offense. I'm the one that led, I was out leading the protest in front of Southwest Airlines a couple weekends in a row for their team members. We led it for Lockheed, we led it for Raytheon and other corporations. I will never, ever let anyone be forced to take a vaccine they don't want to take for any reason. And I will never make our children wear a mask, and I will never issue an executive order that I don't know how I'm going to enforce. I will enforce every single thing I say, because that's leadership and no excuses.
What about the National Guard? And
of course I would.
Oklahoma said no.
I would protect any human, a Texan or otherwise, from being forced to take a vaccine they don't want to take. This is a political game. This is not a medical situation, in my opinion. And Abbott fell right into the trap. And the trap is this: a true patriot always questions the authority of the government. A true patriot never blindly follows government. We are the government. We need to question it, and we need to make the best decision for ourselves and our families.
Okay, not too many people hate property tax more than I do. I do see a few things that aren't so high, like car registration, maybe even hunting and fishing licenses. So, I would probably accept shifting some revenue sources back to those things to reduce our property tax. What would be the first step that you would take? Would you take one taxing authority, or would you try to cut everybody by a nickel or something, or how would you do that?
My plan, which we've been working on for quite a while, is it'll take, like I said, 8 to 10 years to phase it out. Our revenues, we're going to replace the revenue from property tax with revenue from the state of Texas. So we keep local governments fully funded. The revenues of the state of Texas grow at about 8%. These are revenues: oil and gas, sales tax, liquor tax, hotel, motel tax, franchise tax, other revenue buckets. They grow at about 8% annually. We're going to take 90%. I said 2% there. We'll cap it. I think maybe a better way to look at it is we'll just take 90% of that growth and we're gonna buy down property tax with it, which is like $6 billion a year. It's really just a math problem. Then I'm gonna move some of it over to sales tax. So sales tax will gradually go up, but we're not increasing the base on the sales tax. And we're gonna phase out property taxes entirely. So an example would be if a government's getting $8 million in for property tax, next year they'd get 7, 1 million comes from the state of Texas. Next year, 6, 2 million comes from the state of Texas. So that's how we're gonna phase it out entirely.
So we've got dozens of taxing entities, so each one of them will be getting a little bit of money from the state?
Yes, sir. Everything they're getting from property tax will now be shifted to be getting revenue from the state of Texas in sales tax.
And how are we gonna stop them from cutting their revenues by 10%, taking the state's money, and then increasing their revenues by 1 or 2% again?
Well, they wouldn't be getting anything after a period of time from property tax. It goes away. Appraisal districts, everything goes away. You mean like from like sewer and water rates and things like that?
Well, yeah, and school taxes even, and county taxes, once they start receiving that little bit of a kickback, they would not be allowed to increase their taxes.
They won't have any.
Well, the first
No, they'll be
8 years
frozen.
they
Oh, I'm
won't.
sorry, you're right. They'll be frozen. Thank you.
Okay.
So whatever revenue is coming, so your property taxes, if you're paying $8,000 a year, that's frozen. And then the next year you're going to pay 7. The next year you're going to pay 6. The next year you pay 5, 4, 3, all the way down until it goes away.
Okay, good.
That's the plan. Look, there's a lot of paths to get there, a lot of ways to do it, but that's my plan, and we're going to get something like that out of the legislature, and we'll get it done.
And just to be clear, when you first start that, what are you going to do about seniors and disabled freezes? Because they'll be first time you cut a tax, those things are going to be eliminated.
Well, they'll go down 10% or 12.5% a year over 8 year. If it's a 10-year plan, they'll go down 10%.
Only if you do what the legislature calls a refreeze. The first
Yeah.
10% that comes off,
Yes,
they'll
sir.
say disabled people already get 10%, so they get 0.
Well, all of that will be hashed out in all the details, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of comments on all that. But we're going to make it equitable and fair enough so that people can own their own home and their own businesses, and their own ranch, and their own farm, and their own land.
Gender modification, do you want to handle that?
I'll do it.
Okay. So you talked earlier about legislative priorities, and our governor and our lieutenant governor have not, and especially our speaker, have not been proactive. In fact, our speaker, we just got a shot of him meeting with Democrats the other day, about a week ago. That is very problematic for Speaker Phelan. A lot of us go to the conventions and spend a lot of money going in, especially if they're out of town.
Yes.
And this is the largest political convention in the world, 8,000 to 9,000
Yes, sir.
people. We spend all this time and money, and it's like, and we developed the most conservative platform that's out there that you mentioned earlier, and these guys don't even listen to what we're saying. And it took an act of Congress almost and I know you're not running for the lieutenant governor position, but to drag Dan Patrick across the finish line to get constitutional carry.
Yes.
What's going on here? I mean, I know you talked that they're like doing one thing on one hand and the other hand's actually pulling the lever, and it's a lot of razzle dazzle.
Well, I was the senator to file constitutional carry. As I mentioned, here's really what I think what happens down there is that, as I mentioned, they're all in this club, and it's really important for them to get bills done.
It's Senate and House?
Both. Washington's no different. That's why they call them members. I always wondered that. I was like, why do they call them? Believe me, after you get there, they indoctrinate you into being in this club. And they would even come in and say, your loyalty is only with your fellow club members. They call it that. You're so lucky to be here. You're so fortunate. You'll do nothing to embarrass your fellow club members. And they go on and on about that. And So what happens is, who can help them get a bill done? That's what they want. Keep that in mind. Democrats. They would mention the Democrats at almost most of our caucus meetings. How are we going to make the Democrats happy? What do the Democrats think? And then you got our leadership going around bragging about we only had 28 partisan bills out of 700 bills we did. We're so, and he's seen kumbaya with them all the time, you know, and it's trying to make them happy. They never once mentioned our party platform. I'd bring it up, I carried it with me wherever I went down there, I always had it on in my briefcase, and they make fun of it. They just do. They don't care about that. And why they don't like the grassroots is because we might hold them accountable to their campaign promises and to our party platform. But you're not going to help them get a bill done. The Democrats are going to get the bill done. Their fellow rhinos are going to get that bill done with them. So it starts with leadership at the very top. That's why I'm running for governor.
Well, let me ask you something along those lines. Typically, the speaker is elected, you know, out in the open, but that deal's done before it comes to a vote.
Yes.
How do you stop that? Because we've had 3 lousy speakers in a row for the last 3.
I say, who was governor of the state of Texas? Look at that. It's not what it seems down there. The governor's office is involved in a lot, if not everything, and he should be. He's the mediator between the House and Senate. He's the governor of Texas. He's the leader of the Republican Party. These bills that don't get done and empowers Strauss and empowers Phelan are directly responsible to the governor of Texas. If the governor of Texas wanted those bills done, it would get done. I've seen it. When he wanted pre-K done in 15 at the 85th, against our party platform. It was against the platform. He got almost every Republican to vote for it in the Texas Senate except 3. That was the most Marxist piece of legislation I've ever seen. And so the point is, it's about leadership. I will make sure I don't know how much I can influence the election for the speaker. I can certainly have some influence on that. But it's about the legislation more than anything. Let's get our stuff done, and I can have tremendous influence. The governor has tremendous leverage and tools in the toolbox to get that done.
It needs to be the first thing that's done when somebody comes into office. Bob?
Well, look, it's just like this. Can I say that Democrat committee chairman? All you have to say, I'm just pointing out the obvious. As governor, I can veto every single bill on that committee. Well, I go to Phelan and say, you want a Democrat committee chair for transportation, which he has? I say, guess what? Guys, no bill coming out of that committee is going to be law. Simple as that. Y'all can all go home or you can disband the committee because it ain't getting nothing done. And if it's important, if they got something that's important for the state of Texas, we can always come back special session and work on it. I mean, this is about us. I'm tired of losing. We all are. This is about good versus evil. It really is. And evil's on the move. And we're going to win. It's our turn to be on the bat, to be up to bat. It's our turn to be on the offense.
Okay. Bob?
So talking about evil, we've had an issue that we've been trying to get passed through the last couple of legislative sessions with female gender mutilation that hasn't gone anywhere. It's part of our platform. We recently had the part of the platform for the 2020 platform was gender modification.
Yes, sir.
We have, from what I see, no representation in the House or the Senate for Christian morals and values because we're continuing to allow this. Both of those have been extremely high as far as support from the people, and our legislators could care less. They give a lot of lip service. So along with this, it's just another thing that, are you going to be able to fight this?
Absolutely. This is an embarrassment for the state of Texas. when Jeff Younger came to me in 2015 and told me about his son James, I tried to help him. There wasn't a lot I could do. I did. He actually endorsed my campaign as soon as I announced and shot a video for me. It's got 1 million views on it. I am familiar with the issue, and of course this is extremely important to stop the gentle mutilation of our children. And if the governor could get that done. He says he didn't have the votes in the House. That's just a joke. That anybody that believes that is really got a screw loose. What Republican isn't going to vote for that bill if it gets to the floor? I mean, it's proved by 90, this is core to who we are. As Republicans in the state of Texas, I want to get that bill to the floor. I want to see who won't support that piece of legislation. And I want the voters in Texas to see who wouldn't support that.
This should be a nonpartisan bill.
Yes.
I can't think of any Democrats that aren't stating that they're Christians, and that as Christians they would allow this to take place.
Well, let's just ask the question another way. What is the religion of our leadership right now? If they're not Christians and they're not pushing that thing to the floor, what are they?
Good question.
And they're not Republicans either. If every year, every session, we go back down there and we beg to get our priorities done, we get 2 or 3 done. I mean, I've got Democrats that agree with 2 or 3 of our legislative priorities. They're Democrats. And I point this out to them, guys, and I pointed it out over the state for the last 2 years. If you only agree with 30% of our legislative priorities or 40%, you're not a Republican. You're really a rhino or something else, but you need to really recognize what you really are. So, and this is a perfect example of that. And of course I'm going to get that done. Yes, sir.
Okay, we appreciate that you are very clear on your stance and your priorities. If I were a Democrat, I'd be sitting out there and just having a conniption fit, as you can well imagine. So, you're giving a lot of ammunition for the Democrats to turn out 100% to vote against you in November, 11 months from now. How are you going to get the Republicans to come out, get the word out, and because traditionally voter turnout is horrible, especially amongst conservatives. So what's your strategy to get the conservatives to come out en masse?
Well, let me say, first, as you mentioned, I'm Biden's worst nightmare. And they're going to recognize that. But that's okay, because I think I'm in a much better position to beat Bobby O'Rourke in the fall than my opponent. The number one thing they're running him on, and you probably have seen the ads. If you haven't, you should see them. They're very devastating to Abbott. It's about the freeze and the kids freezing to death and all that. And that's where they're going to put $20 million behind those ads. They can't run that on me. I didn't have anything to do with that. I'm taking away their number one idea and their number one platform that they've got against the Republicans. Most of my agenda, even though I believe in our party platform like I do and I'm passionate about it, property tax, I don't think Democrats really like paying that deal either. I mean, some might, but a lot don't. They're out of control, and it's never going away. I don't think a lot of them want 100 illegals from 150 different countries coming across our border, including from Pakistan and Syria and everywhere else either. So those are kind of nonpartisan, and having confidence in our elections is my number 3. And getting rid of government corruption, I mean, there's a lot of them, they're probably against government corruption too. So they voted for my bill and I took that group down. So I think that a lot of the main things I'm running on aren't necessarily partisan, but this is about our virtue. I don't care about what the Democrats think. I'm in this to win. I'm not sending a political message. I'm not trying to do this again or make a political statement. I'm not sure why everybody else is in this race. I don't really like politics. I'm here to save the state of Texas and possibly save the United States of America at the same time. I'm not interested in government's pursuit of happiness. I'm interested in Texans' pursuit of happiness. And I'm going to get our swagger back in this state. So I think, just look what's happened in Florida, and I'll go over that in a minute. The Democrats have given up on Florida because they got a leader in DeSantis. They got a real leader. So we have no courage in our country. We have no courage in our state. And once they get behind the leader, we're going to win.
Thank you, Jay.
In your opening, you mentioned your border plan.
Yes, ma'am.
So would you care to elaborate on that?
Absolutely. I laid this out on Tucker, and I'll try to do it in the same length of time he gave me, which was not much. Got like, Tucker, man, you only gave me a minute. He didn't give me another minute. But it's been up on my website since I announced. Of course, I'm going to finish Trump's wall. I was on the committee in Austin for border security, so I've been in the helicopters and all that stuff down there. I've seen it. And we're going to build it for hundreds of miles, and not just the Abbott's building it for 1.5 miles and put a cyclone fence up. There's going to be a real wall. We'll spend all the money necessary to do that. Most important thing, though, is I'm never asking permission from the federal government to secure the Texas border. I'm never going to do that because it's not necessary. My favorite document in the United States Constitution, and by the way, the platform is my second favorite document, is clearly gives the states the authority to repel an invasion. This is an invasion. 1.5 million to 2 million illegals unapprehended crossing into the state of Texas in 12 months is an invasion. We're going to do everything we can to stop the invasion. I'm engaging the entire Texas military. What might not be enough to 20,000. I'll be soliciting military from other states. We're going to secure the river. We're not enforcing immigration law. We're stopping the invasion. I will not plan on turning anybody over to the federal government. We're going to immediately deport them back to the other side of the river. We're going to do whatever it's necessary. There's 25 bridges over that river. I'm going to stop all inbound commercial traffic from Mexico. Mexico must cooperate if you're ever going to have a real secure border. This is strategic. I'm stopping the commercial traffic until they take back their side of the river from the most dangerous criminal organizations in the world, the Mexican cartels. They're not going to get their trucks in. They love making money. And that every bridge, every road that leads to every bridge is a Texas road paid for by Texas taxpayers and maintained by Texas taxpayers. We can do whatever we want on those roads. We can close them down or anything else. I'm not worried about the lawsuits. I'm going to get done in 30 days on that border, what no one's ever done before. I'm going to actually secure it because I'm the actual Republican running. The federal government will never secure the border. The only chance we have of securing that border is with a courageous governor of Texas, period.
Okay, just real quick, there's no federal roads that go to the bridges?
There isn't. Even the Interstate 35 that comes into Laredo turns into a state road before it gets to the international crossing.
Oh, wow.
Well, I want to talk about schools. You know, across the board, educational institutes are just going crazy, going woke. Imagine things like George Washington University booting out George Washington. So why can't we make legislation that says Texas schools don't take money from anybody, from the feds, not from philanthropists. Either they choose to take money from the state or they choose to be funded by those other people, but not both. Is that a law that could be made?
The state legislature can pass any law. All the authority that really, for all of our governments and the nation comes from the state legislature. State legislature, of course, are the ones that agreed to join the union and created the federal government. The state legislature creates all local governments. We can uncreate a county anytime we want. We can uncreate the school districts anytime we want. We can change the school districts. We can get rid of the cities. But all the authority cities, counties, school districts have comes from the state legislature. Those are all gifts by the legislature. So whatever authority the school districts have is totally dependent on what the legislature says. And of course the legislature can change all that.
Mm-hmm. So why hasn't the legislature stopped dual funding? So you get money from the state or you get money from all the other people?
Well, I don't know. I don't know if that's been brought up or not. I don't. When I was there for the 2 sessions I was there, I don't remember that coming up, and we can certainly look into that. I don't know.
All right, we'll do that.
Yes, sir.
Let's go back. We got time for the last question here. Executive privilege. Let's talk about the freeze again. Who's responsible? Was it one person? Was it one agency? Was it like Pearl Harbor, a calamity of errors along the way? Where does the buck stop at the end of the day? I've heard some theories. I've heard a lot of information. I've read a lot about it. What's your opinion on what happened for Texas being unprepared for that freeze last February,
Yes.
Valentine's Day.
It's absolutely rests on the governor's desk. You can't shuck off your responsibility just because you don't like what happened. The buck stops on his desk, period. He's the leader of the state of Texas. He's the one that didn't pay attention to it. He's the one that got the Wind Energy Award of the, of the nation 30 days before the whole thing melted down. He's the one that who appointed the wrong people to the Public Utility Commission and appointed the ERCOT board. He's the one that had it. The state of Texas worked for 100 years to make sure we had an independent grid. Independent of the FERC system, the federal system. This was our own grid. We were not only the envy of the nation, we were really almost the envy of the world. We're the energy capital of the world. And then all the yahoos down there got infatuated with green energy and wanted to be the cool guys in the club and make the Democrats happy, and they did. And they put all the subsidies, the 313, 312 agreements out there so everybody could buy and build these wind farms with no cost. They drove all the old fossil fuel plants out of business. And people just forgot when the wind isn't blowing, you ain't got any juice. And these windmills are an ecological disaster. I don't know if you've been in West Texas, but these are a disaster. You can't recycle. The blades are stacking up 300 feet high and they're 100 feet long. They're not lasting. The turbines aren't lasting near as long as they thought. Now we run distribution lines all over the place. We run distribution systems outside the state of Texas, which we had never done any of that before. We're cross-pollinating our system with the FERC system, and it's all about leadership. No excuses. We need to make sure that if you're in the renewable business, that you're responsible for that electricity 24/7. Whether you buy it on the open market or you're going to go do whatever you need to do, but we need to make sure they're responsible for their electricity.
Right. Okay. Appreciate it. So we're at that time now. If you want to take up to 5 minutes closing.
I'll be happy to answer more questions if you want me to, or I've got some time.
Okay.
If you want to ask more questions, or I'll close.
Anybody?
It's up to y'all.
I got one.
Okay.
I'll get back to it, sorry.
Stand by.
The governor's cabinet's made up of mostly elected officials. The only exception is the Secretary of State, as I recall, which is he appoints. I see a problem with that. And what's your position on that possibly becoming an elected position?
Definitely looking at making that an elected position. My plan to give you confidence in the elections and government corruptions, I'm creating a law enforcement division. It's called Government Corruption Election Integrity Division. This will have up to 500 officers in it or more, whatever's necessary. Some of them come from DPS. And they're going to be in charge of exactly that. No drugs, no murders, or anything like that. They're going to be in charge of the elections and government corruption. They're going to follow the ballots wherever they go. They're going to know all about election laws. Look, we've got election laws, but nobody enforces the laws. The Secretary of State was complicit in 2018 of violating our laws. Our governor was complicit in violating the election laws unilaterally without going to the legislature in our last elections. We've got to have enforcement of the laws. And they're going to follow the ballots. Like I said, they'll be familiar with the software. I want to go to all paper ballots on this situation. And we're going to have a new court system. It's going to have new judges. We're going to have a new prosecution system. We're going to put all of that venue out of these counties where their violations are occurring. The Secretary of State right now is a disaster. It always has been under Abbott. Abbott's been in charge of our elections for 20 years. 20 years as Attorney General and as Governor appointed Secretary of State. He really never cared about election integrity until Trump told him he had to care about it. Of course, I've called for a forensic audit of the elections. I called for a forensic audit in 18 elections and a third-party forensic audit. So not just the state, not more bureaucrats auditing that. That doesn't give me any comfort. I'm a business guy. I need to know third-party audit. So yes, I'll definitely look at the Secretary of State being an elected position, and my new law enforcement division might be under the Secretary of State's purview.
Thank you.
Yes.
got a question. You being a developer, large, real estate and commercial, you're familiar with MUDs
Yes,
and how they operate?
yes.
What's your opinion on, a lot of MUDs come in and they'll buy out a section of property and they'll park a trailer on there and they'll put, 2 or more voters in that trailer to vote in a large bond, sometimes hundreds of millions of dollars in bonding to develop the infrastructure of that property, which they then charge back to either the commercial folks or residential, whoever is moving into that property. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I participate in MUDs. I do land development, and they serve a purpose. It's not always the best situation, and of course, we follow all the rules set up by the legislature. And I white lighted all those votes when I was down there. But I do participate in that process, and if the legislature wants to change that, I'm going to support it. Most MUDs are set up in areas where there aren't any utilities. There's no sewer, there's no water, there's no way to develop the land. That was the original intent. These have been set up, and they get tweaked over the years, but 100 years ago or more when they were all set up. So, look, they serve a purpose, and I don't know if it's 5 people that vote or 50 people that vote. You can incorporate with 50 people into a city. So it's just whatever rules the state legislature sets up.
Yeah, some people think that, and there's been a number of articles on that. In fact, one of our members several years ago, going back, I think to 2010, got thrown in prison for about 6 months for trying to expose the corruption behind MUDs and what happens. We have MUDs here, we have RUDs, road utility districts. They went in to take over the RUD, and they said that they violated voting laws when in fact it seems like it's, if voters move into a trailer and they get paid, that's almost a pay-for-play type situation. And I think that's the concern of what grassroots have, and maybe you can weigh in on that.
Yeah, I don't think they're supposed to, I know they're not supposed to be, the voters are not supposed to be employed by the developer or related to the developer. So if that was going on, that would break the law.
Yeah, but don't you think, somebody just moving into a trailer just to affect hundreds of millions of dollars of bonds? What could go wrong there, right?
The day after the vote, then they moved out.
They move out.
Yeah, I've seen that, of course. Well, look, we can look out, certainly open to looking at adjusting those rules and regulations.
Okay, all right. Anybody else? Good? Okay, well, thank you for coming in.
Yeah.
And coming down, taking time out.
Yeah, of
Appreciate
course.
it. During the holiday season here, it's Christmas season, and we're close up against the main day. And,
I appreciate y'all doing what you're doing.
well, thank you, and good luck in your campaign.
Do I get a close? Just imagine a Texas where you have complete confidence that our border is secure. Stop the sex trafficking and the fentanyl. I'm never asking permission to do that. Imagine a Texas where you're going to get to own your own home. Imagine a Texas where you're going to have confidence in your election that your votes aren't being stolen. That's what's going to happen in the Huffines administration. We're going to get our culture back. We're going to get our virtue back. And to really experience liberty, we have to have a virtuous society. We've lost too much over the last 30 years when it's time for us to reclaim the liberties that have been stolen from us. If you believe in our party platform, if you believe in the Republican Party, you're going to be very pleased in the Huffines administration. We're going to get our swagger back in this state. And like I said, I'm going to prove it, not just to the country, but to the whole world, what it means to be sovereign. I'm going to blind those socialists from New York to San Francisco to that swamp in Austin. I'm going to blind them to what it means to be free. I'm going to get your personal liberty back and your economic liberty back, because this is Texas. God bless you, and God bless Texas.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you coming in.
Thank you.
Good close.
Merry Christmas.